Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about if natural dyes will become a market for small-scale growers, how to manage yourself in the heat, and then how to manage the garden. So let's do it. All right, happy Tuesday, y'all. I hope everyone is doing well. It is hot here, which in fact, for yesterday was mostly fine. Hannah and I got some lettuce in the ground early and covered that with some shade cloth to protect it, and then harvested the garlic before it got too painful outside, because it did kind of get there in the early afternoon. I always say that these first really hot days are the hottest of the year because our bodies are just not quite hardened off to it yet. The same sort of thing happens kind of in reverse, I guess, with the first cold days in the fall, where temperatures around freezing in November feel like the coldest days that have ever existed, and in February, they feel perfectly reasonable. We are definitely seeing a lot of the European footballers who are in America right now for the Club World Cup experiencing this heat and are none too thrilled about it. Next year, for the actual World Cup, they will be here with more of the same heat, no doubt, so they better learn to love it. Anyways, so yes, it is hot here. It's probably hot where you are, or will be at some point, save for our Southern Hemisphere friends for whom it is winter. And I thought I would take the day to not only talk about how to survive the heat. No, heat is a part of this job, so the approach shouldn't be to just make it through the heat, though obviously that's a big part of it, but to thrive in it as much as humanly possible, given the safety and all other manner of responsible caveats. Anyway, in this first segment, I'll talk about taking care of you, the farmer, and or your crew. Then in segment 3, we'll talk about the, protecting the veggies. All right, so the farmer is a critical part of any farm, and you must take care of yourself for the farm to function, but just hoping that it's not going to be hot is, well, it's not the best approach to farm management. It was not that long ago that I took a question about what to wear in the summer, but just to recap the clothing side of things, a straw hat is essential, something wide-brimmed and capable of casting some shade, not to be confused with throwing shade, which is a totally different thing. In drier regions, you can get away with a thin hoodie to keep you cool, but here in the humid east, that can be a bit suffocating. Our humidity right now is around 80%, so yeah, not easy. Instead, a light and lightly colored long sleeve shirt with a straw hat combo is effective for keeping you cool and from getting too much sun. I like shorts, but again, too much sun is not great, so some light pants work as well. I typically just destroy a few pairs of Goodwill khakis or lightly colored equivalents every season. For shoes, I like Crocs, though if you can get them in a lighter color than mine, that is probably not the worst idea. I love going barefoot as well in terms of coolness, just that connection to the ground, it keeps you cooler, but I will say that you need to be careful of glass, nails, bee stings, etc. Last thing you need is to be trying to stay cool, only to get an injury that keeps you off your feet for a few days. And for whatever reason, some previous tenant of our current farm was like, well, this seems like a good place to bury some broken glass. Basically everywhere on our farm. So that's neat, but it basically means I don't get to go barefoot here like I used to on our other farms. And sunglasses too, because you have to look cool farming. Yeah, that's the only reason. Now, drinking water is key, but electrolytes are important as well. There are some electrolytes you can purchase, like packets of stuff you mix in, I don't know. But we just make our own and or mix some juice into water with a pinch of salt. I'll share a link in the show notes with some proven recipes. Planning your day is a surprisingly important part of managing the heat for yourself. For instance, planning to do the hard stuff in the morning on the hotter days, like cultivating or moving compost or planting or pulling garlic. And leaving the afternoon for, say, seeding in a shady area is a good idea, even if that breaks up your typical schedule. The late afternoon is when the heat is going to peak, so you want to be either done by then or at least out of the fields. Now, some growers will take a large siesta in the middle of the day, and we've done that. I'm all for it. If you can, take a break and go to the creek, that's great for your family. But if you have employees, that is a tough proposition. You can't reasonably be like, okay, let's work 4 hours in the morning and then break until 6 p.m. and then we'll come back for another 4 hours. What we do is say, let's start an hour early and bust things out, and then we can be done 2 hours earlier than normal. Just have it a shorter day, hard and fast. So basically start earlier, but also shorten the day and just try to get done as much as possible for their safety and for ours. Note that also when we had employees, we paid a salary so that they weren't losing hours or pay when we shortened the days. People should be able to have a dependable, consistent income week to week, despite the weather or whims of the farmer. So I just think that's important. I also think shade should be just built into farms. Hedges, trees, tree lines, shade structures. Plan for heat because summer is hot. It's always going to be that way and likely only going to get worse. And last, listen to your body. If you start to feel weak or sluggish or dizzy, stop. Cool off, rest, hydrate. Tuning into your body's heat tolerance takes practice, but err on the side of caution always. Over 1,000 people die each year to excessive heat in America. I have gone down a few times myself from heat exhaustion and it is absolutely brutal. Take the heat seriously and take breaks. The farm will be fine. It's not growing that fast anyway in the serious heat. It's wanting to chill too. What else would you all add? I'll be curious to hear. Otherwise, it's break time. And then when we come back, natural food dyes and farming, BRB. And coffee. Not a good hydrator, but it's a good hydrator of energy, if that's a thing. All right, so this is the allium off of elephant garlic, and it has got to be one of my favorite flowers. Like, we don't even really like elephant garlic that much, but the flower is so awesome. And then you cut it, and you basically let it dry, and it will last indefinitely. I always say it's the last flower you'll ever need. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/notillgrowers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member William Curry, who writes, quote, "Greetings, Jesse. This is a question about," I like greetings. That's fun. Anyway, "Greetings, Jesse. This is a question about the artificial dyes that are slated to be removed from American foods and products by 2027. Assuming that these companies will be looking for natural replacements to these dyes, is there anything you can think of that farmers could grow more of to meet that demand in the next 2 years? For example, red number 5 looks like it's exactly the same color as beets. Could this be a potential new market with high demand? Do you think the potential profit would justify adding a few extra beds of stuff you don't normally grow? Thanks for the quality content. Be safe and stay well," end quote. All right, William, interesting and fun question here. Thank you. So let's back up a second. For those of you who don't know or maybe don't live in the U.S., Health and Human Services is the federal branch that oversees public health and healthcare in the U.S. And in April, they announced that they would be banning a certain range of artificial dyes from being used in foods. America is actually a bit behind on this. Europe and the UK have restrictions and or bans on various food dyes already. And although some of the claims made about these dyes aren't exactly backed up by a ton of science, some of them are, and I think we can all agree we'd prefer our kids to not ingest any more random petroleum-based products than they need to. So, okay, if you're going to take colors away, what are they going to be replaced with, and does that present an opportunity for growers? Well, there are already quite a few natural dyes on the market, such as beets, as you mentioned. Those have been used for quite a while, and the demand will probably grow significantly, as you surmise. The FDA just fast-tracked and approved the use of 3 more natural dyes, in fact, including Galdieria extract blue, a type of red algae that carries a water-soluble blue pigment found in acidic volcanic hot springs. Another natural food dye that was approved is calcium phosphate, an obviously compound mineral of calcium and phosphate. That's a new source of white dye. Then there's also a bug called the cochineal that has a red pigment in their bodies and eggs. So I think that one is used for pink. However, according to the Associated Press and a link that I will put in the show notes, the bugs live only on prickly pear cactuses in Peru and elsewhere. Quote, "About 70,000 cochineal insects are needed to produce 1 kilogram, about 2.2 pounds of dye," end quote. So not a lot that farmers could be involved with there. But the new one that is actually an agricultural product would be butterfly pea flower extract, which is a vining perennial native to the Indonesian island of Ternate, but can, at least theoretically, be grown in tropical or subtropical regions, as well as temperate regions as an annual, though I'm not sure it would be worth it financially for the labor and time involved, but theoretically possible. Typically, how it would work with these production of these sorts of dyes, or really any large-scale agricultural products, is that big companies would contact their growers and contract out the crop they need. There's a good story about how one of these companies, Sensient Technology Corp., they are racing to meet the new demand, according to that same AP story that I mentioned. These companies buy significant quantities depending on the product, millions and millions of pounds of beets in this case from all over the world. So the likelihood that small growers could get in on this growing market is pretty low on a large scale. And frankly, unless you are set up for commercial production, large scale, competing with wholesalers out in like California or in another country is not something I would fully recommend, especially not in this case where the profit margin is going to be exceedingly low, I would imagine. Now, would there or could there be an opportunity to create your own batch of niche natural dyes? Maybe. Potentially there's something there if you have a commercial kitchen and are willing to jump through the regulatory hoops. I can't say I've ever seen a natural food-based dye at the farmer's market before, but it could be an option, could be cool. Beets, turmeric, matcha, spirulina, these are some of the natural dye options out there that could be grown. Whether or not it's worth it, well, that may be a little tougher to figure out. These natural dyes just in general are not as stable or consistent as the artificial dyes, so they come with a host of manufacturing and storage complications, but maybe. Anyway, I think that is a very interesting question. I like this idea of thinking outside of the box a little bit, like looking at, the changes we see in the market and wondering if there's somewhere we can slot in there. So I hope that was at least somewhat helpful, but otherwise we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, managing the heat if you're a garden. Maybe you are a garden. I don't know. Can't see the listener. Anyway, be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTILL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show. All right, so now that we've taken care of you as the grower when it comes to heat, let's manage the garden. Now, there are a few levels that need to be considered in terms of heat. So that would be like below the surface, on the surface, and the air around the plants. When the soil itself is above a certain temperature, especially for shallow-rooted crops like lettuce, stuff will stop growing or bolt, meaning go to seed or just die. So keeping the soil cool requires a dynamic approach. For one, mulches help significantly. That could be straw, hay, or even a light layer of compost can keep the soil cooler, which is a bit surprising because it's a dark color. But when I've measured the temperature below a compost mulch, even if the compost itself is hot, the soil below the mulch is cooler and moist. In fact, even landscape fabric, so long as moisture via drip tape is adequately applied, can keep the soil cool underneath of it, even with the black color. They come with other issues, of course, but it's important to note that having that barrier between the soil and the sky helps to keep it cool and moist. That said, both landscape fabric and compost themselves get very hot from absorbing all the sunlight and can burn roots and plants. So it does matter a little bit what is planted there. Moisture is a huge key to keeping the garden cool as well. We use irrigation to cool the soil and soil surface, as well as sprinkles to cool off our tender greens like lettuce and the air around the plants, specifically wing sprinklers, but it could be whatever you have. We mist about once an hour for a few minutes each time from about 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. right now, especially through this heat. And you can set that on a timer. And because people often ask, the hot water in the hose is not super hot when it hits the plants. Water will cool down in the air as it turns to a mist. And even if it's mildly warm and by the time it hits the plants, any breeze will rapidly cool the plant down. Of course, there's a point at which that doesn't work. So the misting may need to be combined with shade cloth, I kind of think that anything over 100 degrees, I probably also want the shade cloth mixed in. Now, one thing I'll add that's a little bit off the beaten path when it comes to heat management is a nod to our living pathways. I will not and do not recommend living pathways to everyone and maybe even anyone. Full stop there. Make sure you understand that. This is my obligatory, do not try this at home without experimenting in small plots first to make sure it will work for you, because living pathways are complicated clause. But the living pathways really do cool the farm down around the plants. Bare soil is hot. It not only loses carbon and erodes easily, but it just heats up fast and radiates heat back to the plants. So the amount of cooling I need to do compared to perhaps that of bare soil is significantly lower. Lightly colored mulches such as hay, straw, and wood chips or cover crops can also have a similar effect while also maintaining cool, moist soil. Lastly, of course, shade. Shade from trees, shade from shade cloth, whatever shade makes sense for you, especially that which can be removed when you don't need or want it is, I think, important. Surviving the summer or summer heat can come into play in garden planting as well. Perhaps planning to plant your lettuces in the orchard in the summer or around buildings, etc., and then in more sunnier places during the spring and fall, or perhaps planning just to add shade cloth to plots on the hotter weeks and remove it as needed. Some growers, especially in hotter climates, but increasingly just about anywhere, are building structures strictly for shade. To grow under, to raise plants under, whatever. Anyway, what else might you add here? Let us know. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up there for this Tuesday. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook of the Seed Farmer at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you will get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to no new Patreon signups or bump ups for Monday. All good. We will get back to our little girl and her garden tomorrow. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then. Bye.